We cannot ignore yet another example of the inmates in America continuing to run the asylum. Right here in St. Paul, at the intersection of Snelling and Marshall, Starbucks, improbably enough, built a shop there, which was ridiculous of them in the first place. The intersection's just too busy. It's too hectic. And from day one, they've had to bring in police to help the drive-through traffic at that particular.
Really?
In fact, they have a contract with the St. Paul Police Department. But now the workers there have declined to open the store if a St. Paul police officer remains on duty, because the police officers trigger them, and they feel
honestly.
This whole trigger thing is the ultimate demise of this country.
It absolutely is. We basically gave an ultimatum to our district manager and our regional vice president, said a Starbucks employee who asked not to be identified, as workers have been instructed to direct media inquiries to a corporate office. The workers have identified themselves as mostly queer women in their 20s, many of them women of color who began organizing among themselves last June. Among their concerns were interactions between the 6 or 7 off-duty officers hired by Starbucks to direct traffic off Marshall Avenue, all of them white males, according to workers, and the coffee shop's many black and Somali customers. The death of George Floyd proved to be a catalyst. After the murder of George Floyd, let me turn to the Jump. This is on the front page of today's Pioneer Press. Oh, God help you, precious fools. We decided we needed to immediately divest from the St. Paul Police Department, one of the queer workers said. On Monday, St. Paul Police confirmed they had been disinvited from the store, despite a contract agreement that calls for off-duty officers to direct traffic there into August. It's a mess, by the way. It's very difficult to get in and out of there. I have not personally done it, but I've talked to kids I used to have who tried to do it. That might have been one of the places where she cracked up the car and just kept cracking it up. The St. Paul Police Department halted all off-duty employment on April 11 due to civil unrest, said Sergeant Natalia Davis, a department spokeswoman. After a Brooklyn Center officer shot Dante Wright, there were instances of looting in Brooklyn Center, in Minneapolis and St. Paul, so all hands on deck for the cops. When the St. Paul Police Department went back to regular scheduling for off-duty work, the Starbucks at Marshall and Snelling told the department they did not want officers working there. Calling the decision to close the drive-thru temporary, Starbucks officials said they never indicated police were unwelcome. Well, you can say all you want, you officials. You're allowing these goofballs who work for you to run the operation. And so we have temporarily closed the drive-thru and shifted operations while the local team continues to discuss long-term solutions that meet the needs of this community, said Jory Mendez, a spokesman for the Seattle-based coffee shop chain. Drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, and workers alike have long complained about the design of one of the busiest Starbucks in Minnesota. They have tall plastic bollards that are intended to protect cyclists along a Marshall Avenue bike lane, but more than one driver has careened through them. Former Minnesota State Majority Leader Amy Koch required wrist surgery after getting hit by an SUV outside the Starbucks. In October 2018, the city's planning commission approved a site plan. Well, I don't want to read this anymore. The point is that the group of women there, queer women of color, do not like the presence. It doesn't say. Fred Mello wrote this. It doesn't say if they might have been appeased had they been officers of color. I think that's a legitimate question. Might the queer women of color been somewhat put to rest, put to ease, if they had been officers of color? In any event, they have not been officers of color. So the people who work there say, that's it. We're not going to deal with you anymore. So they've closed the drive-through.
They have triggered themselves right out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when triggering used to be a Vietnam veteran heard a loud bang and he'd dive for the ground and he'd come up sweaty and shaking because he truly was very affected from his experience in war? Remember when that was triggering?
Yes, but I don't even recall that the word used would have been triggering. Triggering is
it
a
wasn't.
modern
No,
affectation.
it was a post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Keep this in
Right.
mind. Imagine, you guys all remember your very first job you ever had, right? Mine was I
sure.
worked at the Ace Hardware in Faribault, Minnesota.
Was it a Fratelloni's?
It was not. It was close. I think the Fratelloni family almost bought it, but the Philippi family, who I worked for, wasn't selling. In any event, I can't even imagine for a second being a high school. I started as a sophomore, but let's say a junior, and thinking, well, we can't have this here. Could you imagine walking up to your boss and saying some of this garbage that these kids are getting away with?
No, I can't.
First of all, it wouldn't have come to that because my dad would have dragged my ass out of there and gave me the what for. I can't. The entitlement of so
You know
many
what?
of these kids just makes me so angry.
I'm not a big fan of more laws, but we need to ban triggering. I'm done with triggering. You
it
sensitive
illegal.
little flowers. Grow. Just shut up. Shut up.
Guess what?
Shut up.
Kids, the world sucks. Learn how to deal with it.
I love when people like this make it so easy for me to decide where to shop.
Yep, me too.
Not that I ever would have gone there. I don't like traffic problems, and that is a ridiculous traffic
You
problem.
claim to make the best coffee in the world at
I do.
home.
Starbucks can't top what I do.
Is it? How are they owned? I missed that part of the story. Is this a corporate-owned joint or is it an independent franchise?
That I do not know. I don't know how Starbucks works its franchise program.
So think about this. If it is, in fact, an individually owned Starbucks, that's what you have to deal with employees.
Oh.
It's bad enough they don't show up or the government gives them a big check, so they're making more money sitting on their fat, triggered ass. But then they go into work and they see a cop doing his job, helping you out so you can make more money.
That's right.
They get triggered, and they're triggering themselves right out of a gig.
Imagine what's going to happen too, Kenny. You're mentioning the whole aspect of the kids, and I'm going to say let's say 16 to 25-year-old kid today that's happy staying at home and getting the government check. At some point, those checks are going to stop coming in, and at some point, they're going to have to get a real job. They're going to be unemployable.
Well, I don't mean to dwell on this, and I don't mean this facetiously,
Okay.
but what difference does it make that these women are mostly queer women of
It
color?
doesn't.
How does that distinguish them?
That doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't matter because anybody of that age is the triggerable type.
Triggerable.
Yeah, and just the fact that they're ladies or lesbians or whatever really doesn't matter. It's this generation of woe is me. I'm so sensitive. I can't deal with reality.
Well,
Oh.
Starbucks, this is going to come back to haunt you. This place, to my way of thinking, won't stay in business because you're making it too difficult for me to go there. The cops at least made it difficult to make an attempt to get through the drive-through. Now you've closed the drive-through, and there's very little reason, given the number of coffee shops we have in the Twin Cities, there's very little reason to go down there and try to park your car and go in. It's too busy. The corner's ridiculous.
There's so much anxiety in that area from 94 over past Marshall. What's the other street that runs? I don't know what it is. Where was the bar at?
What bar?
Hamlin?
Our Irish guys weren't they on? No,
O'Gara's.
they weren't on Marshall. Yeah, were they? Yeah.
O'Gara's was on Snelling, right near where
Yeah.
we're talking about here.
Yeah, just a block away, if I remember right, a couple blocks away.
But gee whiz, you're running a business. I don't think it can be wrapped up any better than Kenny wrapped it up. The cops are there, queer women of color, to help you make a living. You've now disabused them of that notion, and you've chased them away, and now what are you going to do?
Start sucking on the government teat, I guess. I don't know.
Gee whiz, gee willikers. Gee willikers.
You're going with the Wally and the Beeve line of, gee willikers, Wally.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You know, I get triggered up here about once a week, and what's triggering me are these little green LP tank things that you can't refill. I put them out at about 100 yards, and I trigger them for about 10 minutes. And then I go, oh my God, I've gone through 30 rounds. I got to stop triggering.